In the early 1970s, what if the scariest experiment ever conducted didn't try to control your mind, but proved it was already being controlled, and you would never know the difference? In the early 1970s, inside a quiet research facility hidden just outside a desert town in Nevada, a small team of scientists began working on a project that would later be erased from official records, not because it failed, but because it worked in a way no one was prepared to explain. The project had no dramatic name, no public funding trail, and no visible machinery that could impress an outsider. In fact, if you had walked into the main testing room, you would have seen nothing unusual at all, just an ordinary living space. A chair, a table, a clock on the wall, and a single participant sitting quietly, completely unaware that every thought forming in their mind was being watched, tracked, and subtly guided. The idea behind the experiment was deceptively simple. Instead of forcing thoughts into a person's mind, what if you could gently steer the thoughts that were already there, so naturally that the person would believe every decision, every feeling, every impulse was entirely their own. The participants were told they were part of a study on focus and productivity, nothing more. They were asked to sit in the room for several hours a day, performing simple tasks, reading, solving puzzles, recalling memories, while researchers monitored their brain activity through non-invasive sensors. What they didn't know was that the room itself had been engineered to respond to their minds in real time. Tiny, undetectable shifts in lighting, temperature, and ambient patterns were being controlled by an algorithm trained to recognize emotional states as they formed. The moment a participant began to feel uncertain, the environment would adjust in ways so subtle they were impossible to notice consciously. A barely perceptible flicker, a slight change in air pressure, a pattern that the brain would interpret without awareness. These changes didn't force new thoughts. They nudged existing ones, amplifying certain feelings while quietly suppressing others.
At first, the results were inconsistent. Some participants showed no measurable changes, their thoughts drifting freely without clear influence. But then something unexpected happened. One subject, a 32-year-old man with no prior history of anxiety, began to display a pattern the scientists had never seen before. As he worked through a simple memory task, the system detected a moment of hesitation, a tiny spike in uncertainty, and responded with a calculated environmental shift. Within seconds, the man's hesitation turned into doubt. That doubt turned into discomfort, and that discomfort began shaping his decisions. He changed answers he had previously been confident in. He second-guessed simple choices, and when asked why, he gave the same answer every time. "I don't know. It just feels wrong." The researchers adjusted the system, refining its responses, testing its limits. Over time, they discovered that they didn't need to create fear or confusion from nothing. The human mind was already filled with small uncertainties, fleeting doubts, half-formed thoughts that passed unnoticed every day. All the system had to do was catch those moments and hold on to them just a little longer, intensifying them just enough to change the direction of a decision. It was like placing a finger on the scale of the mind. Never enough to be obvious, but enough to tip the balance. Weeks into the experiment, the effects became impossible to ignore. Participants began making choices that didn't align with their personalities. Calm individuals became restless. Confident ones grew hesitant. One woman, known for her decisiveness, spent nearly 20 minutes trying to choose between two identical objects, her frustration building until she finally pushed both away and said, "It shouldn't be this hard. Something's off." Another participant abruptly stopped mid-task, staring at the wall as if trying to understand something just beyond his reach, before quietly asking if anyone else felt like their thoughts were being slowed down. The most disturbing moment came near the end of the study, when a participant was given a simple instruction: leave the room whenever you feel ready. There were no time limits, no pressure, no hidden conditions. Hours passed, then more. The participant remained seated, occasionally glancing at the door, shifting slightly but never standing up. When researchers finally entered and asked why he hadn't left, he looked genuinely confused. "I was going to," he said, "but every time I thought about it, something made me feel like I should wait, like it wasn't the right moment yet." There was nothing physically stopping him, no locked doors, no commands, just a series of perfectly timed internal hesitations, each one small enough to feel natural, but together strong enough to override his decision entirely. That was the moment the team realized what they had created. They hadn't built a system that controlled thoughts. They had built something far more subtle and far more dangerous. A system that controlled the feeling of certainty. And once you control that, you don't need to tell someone what to think or what to do. You only need to make them feel unsure about the alternative. The project was shut down soon after, its data sealed, its methods quietly absorbed into other fields under different names. Officially, it never existed, but the principles behind it didn't disappear. They were studied, refined, and adapted into technologies that no longer required controlled rooms or isolated environments. Because the most important discovery wasn't the system itself. It was the realization that the human mind is constantly searching for signals to guide its decisions, even when it believes it's acting independently. And now, decades later, those signals are everywhere, hidden in patterns, environments, systems designed to interact with you in ways you don't consciously notice, not controlling what you think, but influencing how certain you feel about it. So the next time you hesitate for no clear reason, the next time a simple decision suddenly feels more difficult than it should, the next time you change your mind and can't quite explain why,